The portal didn't announce itself with dramatic fanfare or cosmic thunder. It simply tore reality apart 3,000 feet above London's eastern end, a ragged wound in the fabric of space that bled green fire and the stench of sulfur. For precisely 4 seconds, the rift burned like a malignant star, then spat out a single armored figure who plummeted toward the Thames with the inevitability of a meteor strike. The Doomslayer had been wrist-deep in a baron of Hell's chest cavity when the universe shifted beneath him. One moment, Hell's endless corridors, demon screams, the familiar rhythm of kill, move, kill. The next, cold air rushing past his helmet, city lights spreading below like a constellation he didn't recognize, and the sickening realization that Samuel Hayden's teleportation network had finally, catastrophically failed. He hit the river at terminal velocity. The impact sent a geyser of water 60 feet high and shattered every window within a quarter mile. Beneath the surface, green energy flickered across his Praetor suit's systems as it compensated for damage, sealing microfractures and rerouting power. The HUD displayed errors in languages that shouldn't exist, then stabilized into something approximating functionality. The Slayer surfaced near Southwark Bridge, hauled himself onto the embankment with mechanical efficiency, and took stock. No demon sounds, no plasma fire, no screaming UAC scientists, just silence. Wrong silence, the kind that came before ambushes. His armor's sensors swept the cityscape and found nothing resembling Hell's architecture. Stone buildings, steel and glass towers, electric lights, human construction, but wrong somehow. Too old, too new, entirely the wrong aesthetic. The atmospheric readings were pure Earth standard, not Mars, not Argent de Noor, just Earth. But which Earth? When? A couple stumbling home from a pub rounded the corner, saw the 7-foot armored figure dripping river water and covered in what looked disturbingly like dried blood, and wisely chose to sprint in the opposite direction. Their terror registered in their peripheral awareness. Civilians, real ones, not UAC personnel who'd made their deals with Hell, not demon-possessed husks, actual innocent people who had no idea what lurked in the dark. The Slayer checked his weapons systems. Super shotgun, functional, 48 shells remaining. Plasma rifle, operational, 60% charge. Heavy assault rifle, intact. Rocket launcher, 4 rockets. BFG 9000, 1 shot, no way to recharge. Equipment launcher, 6 frag grenades, 3 ice bombs. Chainsaw, fuel at 30%. Crucible, available but finite energy. Not ideal, but he'd worked with worse. He needed information, location, timeline, threat assessment. But first, he needed to determine whether this reality's version of Hell had already established a foothold. In his experience, demons were rarely subtle about their presence. Find the corruption, trace it to the source, eliminate it with extreme prejudice. Simple, effective. It had worked for eons. The Slayer began walking toward the city center, each step purposeful, his sensors sweeping for any trace of demonic energy. London's streets stretched before him, ancient and modern, layered with centuries of human history. Somewhere in this labyrinth there would be answers, and if there were demons here, whatever form they took, they would learn the same lesson their hell-born cousins had learned across countless dimensions. Some things could not be stopped. Some things would never rest. And the Doomslayer was forever. The village of Cheddar had been peaceful once. Quaint stone cottages, narrow streets, a pub serving the same shepherd's pie recipe for 3 generations. That peace died when vampires moved into the local manor house and began treating the population like a buffet with a heartbeat. The Doomslayer arrived at dawn, following sensor readings he'd initially dismissed as atmospheric anomalies. What his Praetor suit interpreted as localized necrotic energy signatures registered stronger here than anywhere in London. The streets were too quiet. Not empty. He could detect heartbeats in houses, shallow breathing, but no movement. Fear had a particular quality to it. This was fear that kept people locked behind doors, even when the sun rose. He found the first ghoul in the village square, former postman based on the tattered uniform, pale skin, milky eyes, jerking movements that mimicked life without understanding it. The creature turned toward him, mouth opening to reveal teeth that had never belonged in a human skull, and lunged with speed that would have surprised most soldiers. The super shotgun spoke once. The ghoul's torso separated from its legs in a spray of blackish blood and tumbled backward across the cobblestones. The slayer stepped forward, expecting the familiar dissolution of demon matter. Instead, the body remained solid, very definitely dead, but not vanishing into ash and sulfur. Wrong. That was wrong. More ghouls emerged from alleyways and doorways, a dozen, 2 dozen, moving with pack coordination. Former villagers, all of them. The Slayer's threat assessment protocols registered them as hostile entities and prioritized accordingly. They died in seconds, shotgun blasts and precision rifle fire, reducing them to twitching corpses that leaked actual blood instead of burning away into nothing. Still wrong. Demons didn't leave bodies. They returned to hell when killed, unless properly banished. These things stayed dead, stayed physical, stayed real in a way that hell's minions never did. "Fucking finally," a voice drawled from the manor house entrance. "Someone who shoots first and doesn't bore me with questions." The vampire who emerged wore an expensive suit that had been fashionable perhaps 20 years ago, now stained with what was definitely human blood. Young-looking, maybe 30 in appearance, with the kind of aristocratic features that came from centuries of selective breeding. His eyes glowed faintly red in the morning light, and he moved with liquid grace that suggested speed far beyond human capacity. "You're a new player," the vampire continued, tilting his head to study the Slayer's armor. "Not Hellsing, not Vatican, certainly not the Round Table's usual rubbish. What are you, some kind of super soldier? Millennium experiment gone wonderfully right?" The Slayer's response was to level his plasma rifle and fire. The superheated bolt punched through the vampire's chest, cauterizing a fist-sized hole straight through his heart. The creature staggered, looked down at the smoking wound with genuine surprise, then laughed. "Oh, that actually hurt! Marvelous!" The wound began closing, flesh knitting together with visible speed. "You've got proper weaponry, I'll give you that, but you're fighting the wrong type of monster, mate." The vampire blurred forward, covering 30 feet in less than a second. The Slayer sidestepped, faster than humanly possible, and brought the crucible online. The energy blade ignited in a flash of red light, 7 feet of concentrated killing intent. He swung in a clean arc that should have bisected the vampire at the waist. The blade passed through. The vampire screamed, not in pain, but in something approaching ecstasy, as the crucible's energy disrupted whatever unholy force sustained him. Unlike the ghouls, unlike anything the Slayer had encountered before, the vampire began to burn. Not demon fire burn, actual combustion, flesh blackening and crumbling as the crucible's power proved antithetical to undead existence. The creature collapsed into ash that scattered across the cobblestones. The Slayers stood in the settling dust, processing. Not demons, something else. Something that bled, that healed, that could be killed but required specific methods. His HUD flagged the energy signature, necrotic, not demonic, similar destructive intent, completely different metaphysical foundation. Behind curtained windows, villagers watched the armored figure standing among the corpses of their tormentors. Some wept with relief, others simply stared, trying to comprehend what they'd just witnessed. The monster that had terrorized them for weeks had been reduced to ash in seconds by something that looked like it had walked out of a science fiction nightmare. The Slayer's sensors detected more signatures, stronger ones, moving fast to this location, reinforcements or scavengers drawn to the violence. Either way, they would receive the same reception. He reloaded the super shotgun with practiced efficiency and waited. Integra Fairbrook Wingate's Hellsing learned of the incident 12 minutes after it concluded. She sat in her office at Hellsing Manor, the morning's intelligence reports spread across her desk like a map of supernatural insurgency, when Walter entered with the kind of purposeful stride that meant significant news. "We have a situation in Cheddar, Sir Integra," the aging butler said, setting down a fresh cup of tea with mechanical precision. "The vampire nest we've been monitoring was eliminated approximately 15 minutes ago, not by our forces." Integra's hand paused halfway to her teacup. "Iscariot?" "Unknown. Eyewitness accounts describe a single individual, 7 feet tall, heavily armored in green and bronze plating, carrying advanced weaponry, destroyed 37 ghouls and the master vampire in under 4 minutes. The master was reduced to ash, complete destruction, not conventional vampire termination." That got her full attention. Master vampires didn't simply crumble to ash unless subjected to specific consecrated weapons or overwhelming supernatural force. The Hellsing organization had spent considerable resources developing such capabilities. The idea that an unknown entity possessed comparable or superior methods was deeply concerning. "Show me." Walter produced a tablet displaying grainy mobile phone footage captured by a terrified villager. The image quality was poor, but it showed enough. An armored figure moving with military precision, weapons that discharged energy rather than conventional bullets, and a red blade that burned with light reminiscent of Alucard's power, but fundamentally different in character. Analysis suggests the armor is technological rather than magical. No religious iconography, no crosses, no holy water deployment, pure firepower and close combat efficiency. He's currently stationary in the village center, apparently waiting. Waiting for what? Unknown. Perhaps reinforcements, perhaps us. Integra stood, walked to the window overlooking Hellsing Manor's grounds. The morning sun painted everything in deceptive peace. Somewhere in the English countryside, an unknown super soldier had just accomplished what should have required a full Hellsing tactical team and Alucard's direct intervention. "Deploy Alucard," she said. "Full reconnaissance. Establish contact if possible. Eliminate if he proves hostile to Hellsing interests or civilian populations. And if he proves hostile to vampires specifically, then we learn whether he can distinguish between monsters and monster hunters." Integra's expression hardened. "Alert Alucard. Tell him I want the intruder alive if possible. But Walter, tell him not to underestimate this one. Anyone who can ash a master vampire with that efficiency deserves to be taken seriously." Walter bowed slightly. "I'll relay the message, though I suspect Alucard will be more entertained than concerned." "Yes, well, Alucard's entertainment often results in property damage." She picked up her teacup, found it had gone cold, and set it down with distaste. "Have the wild geese on standby. If this escalates, I want conventional support ready to evacuate civilians and establish a perimeter." As Walter departed to execute her orders, Integra returned to the window. Somewhere out there, an unknown element had entered the supernatural equation that governed Britain's shadow war. Whether he would prove asset, adversary, or catastrophe remained to be seen. But she hadn't maintained the Hellsing legacy by ignoring potential threats. And anything that killed vampires with that level of efficiency was either the greatest weapon she'd never known she needed or the most dangerous wild card she'd ever faced. In Cheddar, the Doomslayer's sensors registered multiple incoming contacts, fast, impossibly fast for human locomotion. The energy signatures matched the vampire he just eliminated, but magnified, older, stronger, saturated with power that made his HUD flicker with warning indicators. He checked the Crucible's charge, 68%. The BFG, still one shot. Ammunition levels, adequate for sustained engagement, but not prolonged siege. The contacts were 3 miles out and closing. ETA, 90 seconds. The Slayer planted himself in the center of the village square, super shotgun loaded, stance grounded. Whatever was coming, it would learn the same lesson. Demon, vampire, undead abomination, categories didn't matter. Hostile entities received the same response. Absolute, uncompromising violence. The sound of approaching footsteps echoed through empty streets, not running, walking, confident, amused. "Let's see what you're made of," the Slayer thought, and thumbed the shotgun's safety off. Alucard arrived with all the subtlety of a crimson thunderstorm. One moment the street was empty. The next, shadows condensed into a towering figure in red coat and wide-brimmed hat, eyes glowing like coals behind orange-tinted glasses. He studied the armored intruder with the kind of interest a connoisseur might show a particularly rare vintage. "Well now," Alucard said, his voice a rich baritone edged with dark amusement. "What curious little toy has wandered into my mistress's territory?" The Doomslayer's response was immediate and unequivocal. The super shotgun roared, both barrels discharging at point-blank range directly into Alucard's face. The vampire's head snapped back, matter spraying across the cobblestones in a crimson fan. For half a second, the headless body swayed. Then, it laughed. The laughter came from the ruined neck stump, a wet, gurgling sound of pure delight. Flesh writhed and reformed, Alucard's head reconstructing itself from the neck up like time reversing. Within 3 seconds, he was whole again, grin wider than before. "Oh, I like you already," Alucard purred. "No talking, no posturing, just pure violent intent. How refreshingly honest." The Slayer discarded the empty shotgun, switching to his heavy assault rifle in a fluid motion, and opened fire. Armor-piercing rounds hammered into Alucard's chest and torso at full automatic, each impact punching through the vampire's body and out the other side. Blood and tissue sprayed like mist. Alucard staggered backward under the assault, still smiling, his body riddled with holes that immediately began closing. "Yes, yes!" Alucard's coat billowed as shadows erupted from his form, dark tendrils that lashed toward the Slayer like serpents. "Show me what you can do!" The Slayer dodged left, his Praetor suit's mobility systems compensating for the increased gravity and atmospheric density of this Earth. A shadow tendril grazed his shoulder, and his HUD screamed warnings about necrotic energy attempting to penetrate his armor's shielding. He responded with a grenade from his equipment launcher, the explosive detonating at Alucard's feet and sending the vampire tumbling backward in a cloud of fire and shrapnel. Alucard rose from the flames, skin singed, flesh charred, still regenerating. "Impressive firepower, but you're not understanding the situation." He spread his arms wide. "I am the bird of Hermes, eating my own wings to make myself tame. Do you know what that means, little soldier? It means I cannot die, not from your bullets, not from your fire, not from anything in your arsenal." The Slayer switched to his plasma rifle. The superheated bolt seared through Alucard's torso, flash-cooking vampire flesh and boiling blood.
Alucard screamed, not in pain, but in ecstasy, in the joy of finally facing someone who fought with absolute conviction. He blurred forward, shadows propelling him at speeds that broke the sound barrier. The collision sent both combatants through the wall of the nearest building. Brick and mortar exploded outward as the Slayer and Alucard crashed into what had been someone's living room. The Slayer rolled with the impact, came up with the crucible igniting in his hand, and swung for Alucard's neck.
The energy blade connected. Alucard's eyes widened fractionally, the first sign of genuine surprise as the crucible's power sheared through his supernatural resilience. The blade carved a burning line across his chest, and for a moment the wound didn't heal. Smoke rose from blackened flesh that refused to regenerate. "Now that," Alucard said, touching the wound with something approaching respect, "is interesting. What kind of weapon—" The Slayer didn't let him finish. He pressed the assault, crucible sweeping in practiced arcs, each strike designed to bisect, decapitate, or dismember. Alucard danced backward, his regeneration struggling to keep pace with the blade's damaging effect. For the first time in decades, perhaps centuries, Alucard fought defensively. The vampire's shadows exploded outward in a desperate counter, forming dozens of hell-ride hellhounds that leaped at the Slayer from all angles. The Slayer switched tactics instantly, deactivating the crucible to conserve power and pulling his shotgun from its magnetic lock. Glory kill instinct took over. Grab, rip, tear. He caught a hellhound mid-leap, crushed its skull with his bare hand, felt the familiar surge of vitality as the kill fed his armor's recovery systems. It worked, not as efficiently with true demons, but the principle held. Violent execution restored function. These shadow constructs counted enough to trigger the effect. He tore through the hellhounds with mechanical brutality, each kill feeding him strength, each dismemberment a tactical calculation. Alucard watched, and his grin slowly faded into something more contemplative. This wasn't just a soldier. This was something built for a very specific purpose, refined by unimaginable experience into a perfect killing instrument. "You're not from here," Alucard said, reforming his shadows scattered. "You're not from this world at all, are you? You fight like someone who's been killing monsters for longer than you've been alive." The Slayer's only answer was to level the BFG 9000. The weapon hummed to life, green energy coalescing in its barrel with apocalyptic promise. Alucard's expression shifted, still amused, but now genuinely curious about whether this weapon could actually inconvenience him. "Fire that in a civilian area and you'll level half the village," Alucard noted. The Slayer's finger remained on the trigger, steady, unwavering. His HUD calculated collateral damage, civilian casualties, structural collapse probability, unacceptable losses. He needed the weapon for genuine demonic threats, not expendable tests of regenerative capacity. He lowered the BFG fractionally, not standing down, but acknowledging the tactical reality. Alucard's grin returned, but different now, respectful. Smart and brutal, my favorite combination. He straightened, shadows withdrawing. "I'm here under orders from my master, Integra Hellsing. She wants to talk. You can come peacefully, or we can reduce this entire village to rubble and end up in the same conversation anyway. Your choice." The Slayer stood in the wreckage of someone's home, weapons hot, every sensor screaming threat warnings, and calculated his options. Unknown territory, limited ammunition, vampire that couldn't die by conventional means, an organization called Hellsing that apparently specialized in supernatural threats. Information had value, especially if it led to understanding this reality's version of hell and how to eliminate it. He engaged his armor's safety protocols and lowered his weapons to a neutral carry position. Not surrender, strategic repositioning. Alucard's laugh echoed through the ruins. Oh, this is going to be fun. The Vatican received word of the Cheddar incident through channels that predated modern telecommunications by several centuries. Father Alexander Anderson read the encrypted report in his quarters at Iscariot Section 13 headquarters, his expression growing darker with each line. An unknown super soldier, advanced weaponry, vampire extermination efficiency that rivaled Alucard himself, and most troubling, deployment of an energy blade that destroyed undead tissue with the kind of permanence usually reserved for consecrated weapons blessed by the highest authorities of the Church. Anderson set down the report and reached for his Bible, thumbing through pages worn soft by constant handling. His regenerative abilities meant he'd outlived most of his contemporaries, witnessed the evolution of the supernatural arms race from blessed bayonets to modern chemical weapons. But this was something new, something that killed monsters with pure technological violence, no prayers required. Heresy or miracle, he muttered, closing the Bible. The distinction mattered. Father Rinaldo entered without knocking, clutching a second report. Father Anderson, we've received confirmation from our London operative. The Hellsing organization has taken the armored individual into custody. He's currently en route to their manor for interrogation. Integra's got him? Anderson stood, reaching for his coat where his blessed bayonets rested in easy reach. Then we don't have much time. If he's Protestant technology, she'll weaponize him against us. If he's something else... He paused, considering. If he's something else, we need to determine whose side God wants him on. Section 13 has not been authorized for direct intervention on British soil, Rinaldo warned. Anderson's smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Aye, not authorized, but not forbidden either if we're simply investigating a potential threat to the faithful. Get me a helicopter and a strike team. Tell Heinkel and Yumi to prep for possible combat deployment. And if the Hellsing organization protests our presence, then they can take it up with His Holiness. Anderson strapped on his coat with practiced efficiency, feeling the familiar weight of his armament settle across his shoulders. There's a man out there who kills vampires like he's been doing it his entire life, and nobody knows where he came from or what he wants. That's the kind of unknown that gets good Catholics killed if we're not careful. The helicopter lifted off from Vatican territory 40 minutes later, rotors cutting through Mediterranean air before turning north toward England. Anderson sat in the passenger compartment, cleaning his bayonets with methodical precision, while Heinkel and Yumi performed similar rituals with their own weapons. "What do we know about his capabilities?" Heinkel asked, checking the magazine on her handgun. "Enough to worry Alucard, which means enough to worry us. He tears through ghouls like tissue paper, ashed a master vampire in seconds, and fought the Hellsing's pet monster to a standstill. That's not normal super soldier enhancement. That's something built for a very specific kind of war." Yumi's eyes gleamed with the particular madness that came before battle. "Do we kill him or recruit him? We determine what he is first. If he's a weapon against the unholy, we offer alliance. If he's Protestant corruption wearing holy purpose like camouflage, we eliminate the threat. And if he's neither," Anderson's expression grew distant, "if he's neither, then God's put something interesting in our path, and we'd best figure out why." The English Channel passed beneath them, dark water reflecting overcast skies. Anderson continued his blade maintenance, each motion a meditation, each edge a prayer. Somewhere ahead, in Hellsing's ancestral manor, an unknown element sat in interrogation, the kind of element that could tip the balance in the shadow war between Vatican and Hellsing, between Catholic and Protestant supernatural forces. Anderson had spent his life hunting monsters, but sometimes, he reflected, the most dangerous thing in the room wasn't the monster, it was the other hunter, the one who didn't share your definition of evil, who killed with the same conviction, but aimed at different targets. "ETA 20 minutes to London airspace," the pilot called back. Anderson sheathed his bayonets and smiled. Time to meet the new player and see what side of the chessboard he belongs on. Hellsing Manor's interrogation room was designed to contain vampires, reinforced with silver-lined walls and blessed barriers that would weaken most supernatural entities. The Doomslayer sat in a chair that groaned under his armored weight, utterly unbothered by the precautions, his helmet's visor reflecting the overhead lights in an unreadable green sheen. Integra stood on the opposite side of the steel table, Walter at her shoulder, studying the figure who'd carved through Cheddar's vampire population like a scythe through wheat. Alucard lurked in the corner, shadows pooling around his feet, watching the Slayer with the interest of a predator encountering something it couldn't quite categorize. "You don't speak," Integra said. "Not a question, but an observation. Or you won't. Either way, we need answers. Who sent you? What organization do you represent? What is your objective in Britain?" The Slayer remained motionless. His HUD tracked all 3 occupants, threat assessment running continuously, weapons systems on standby but not aggressive. Wait, listen, learn. The same patience he'd used exploring UAC facilities and Hell's architecture now applied to understanding this reality's power structure. "Your weapons are technological, not magical," Integra continued, changing tack. "Advanced beyond current military specifications. That armor could withstand anti-tank rounds based on what Alucard reports. You're not Iscariot. They favor blessed weapons and religious iconography. You're not Millennium. Their aesthetic is completely different. So what are you?" The Slayer's only response was to slowly, deliberately place both hands flat on the table, non-threatening posture, listening position. His sensors continued mapping the manor's layout, identifying potential exits, cataloging weapons signatures throughout the building. Walter stepped forward. "Perhaps a different approach, Sir Integra. Based on his behavior pattern, he responds to direct threats, but hasn't initiated violence against non-hostile entities. The Cheddar vampires attacked first. He defended himself. When Alucard ceased hostilities, so did he." "He shot me in the face," Alucard interjected cheerfully. "Twice." "After you emerged from shadows making provocative statements," Walter countered. His threat assessment prioritized immediate danger. The butler turned to address the Slayer directly. "You're in defensive mode now because we haven't attacked. You're gathering intelligence, soldier behavior, not berserker behavior." The Slayer tilted his head fractionally. Acknowledgement. "There," Walter said. "He understands us. He simply chooses not to speak." The manor's alarm system erupted into shrill warning. Integra's hand went to her sidearm as Walter's expression shifted to combat readiness. Alucard's grin widened. "We have incoming," Walter reported, checking a tablet linked to the manor's security system. "Helicopter approaching from the southeast. Vatican markings. Section 13. Anderson." Integra spat the name like a curse. "Of course. Probably detected our guest and decided to investigate." She turned back to the Slayer. "We're about to have visitors, Catholic vampire hunters who will likely view you as either heresy or asset. If you want to avoid another fight, I suggest you remain seated and non-hostile." The helicopter's rotors grew audible even through the manor's thick walls. The Slayer's tactical systems calculated approach vector, passenger capacity, weapons likely on board. His hand shifted toward the super shotgun mag-locked to his thigh. "Don't," Integra warned. "Anderson is many things, but he's not your enemy. Not yet. We are all in the business of killing monsters. The question is whether you can distinguish between monsters and those who hunt them." Outside, the helicopter touched down on Hellsing Manor's grounds. Moments later, the distinctive sound of blessed bayonets being drawn rang through the entrance hall. Father Alexander Anderson's voice boomed through the corridors, thick with Scottish brogue and righteous conviction. "Integra Hellsing, I'm here on Vatican business regarding your new Protestant toy. Send him out or I'm coming in."
Alucard laughed, a sound like grinding tombstones. "Oh, this should be entertaining. The paladin meets the space marine. I wonder who'll draw first blood." The Slayer stood, chair scraping across the floor. His posture shifted subtly, not aggressive, but ready. If more vampires came through that door, or more undead, or anything else that registered as hostile, the response would be immediate and comprehensive. But Walter had been right. He was a soldier, not a monster. Soldiers assessed threats before engaging, and right now, the greatest threat wasn't the vampire in the corner or the woman with the gun. It was his own ignorance about this reality's rules of engagement. "Let him in," Integra said, resignation in her voice. "Let's get this theological pissing match over with before someone levels my manor." The doors burst open. Father Alexander Anderson strode in, bayonets gleaming, eyes blazing with zealous intensity. He took one look at the Doomslayer's armor and stopped, expression shifting through surprise, confusion, and finally settling on something like grim respect. "Well now," Anderson said slowly, "you're not what I expected at all."
Anderson circled the Doomslayer like a priest examining a miracle of dubious origin. Heinkel and Yumi flanked the entrance, weapons ready, but the Scottish paladin seemed more fascinated than hostile. His regenerative abilities meant he feared very little, but the armored figure before him radiated the kind of violence that made even immortals cautious. "No crosses," Anderson observed, noting the armor's complete lack of religious iconography. "No Bible verses etched in the metal, no holy water dispensers or blessed ammunition." He leaned closer, studying the praetor suit's intricate plating. "But you kill vampires, kill them proper, with prejudice and efficiency. So what are you, lad? Angel or devil?" The Slayer's helmet turned to track Anderson's movement. His sensors analyzed the bayonets, consecrated steel, blessed by high-level Catholic authority, designed to permanently destroy supernatural entities. Similar lethality to his crucible, but achieved through divine rather than technological means. The regenerative healing factor matched high-tier demon resilience, but operated on different metaphysical principles. Not a threat unless provoked, filed under potential ally or obstacle depending on objectives. "He doesn't talk," Alucard called from his corner. "Bit rude, really. Just shoots first and asks questions never." "Good policy when dealing with bloodsuckers," Anderson shot back without taking his eyes off the Slayer. "I've seen the Cheddar reports. 37 ghouls and a master vampire, all eliminated in under 4 minutes. That's not luck, that's experience. Years of it, maybe decades." His expression hardened. "Or centuries." He suddenly thrust a bayonet forward, not attacking but testing. The blade stopped inches from the Slayer's chest. No flinch, no defensive movement. The Slayer simply stood there waiting for actual threat before responding. Anderson withdrew the blade and nodded slowly. "Discipline. You've got the patience of a warrior who's seen everything and knows panic gets you killed." He turned to Integra. "He's no vampire, no demon either, despite what his armor might suggest. He's something else entirely." "Brilliant deduction," Integra said dryly. "Care to share what that something else might be?" "A crusader." Anderson's voice carried absolute conviction. "Look at him, purpose-built for a specific kind of war. Every weapon optimized for maximum lethality. No hesitation, no mercy, just systematic elimination of the enemy. I've seen men like this before, knights who fought in the Holy Land, inquisitors who purged darkness from Europe's shadows. But those men carried crosses and spoke prayers. This one carries pure violence and speaks not at all." The manor shook, not earthquake or explosion, something else. Reality itself seemed to ripple, a sensation that made even Alucard straighten with interest. The Slayer's sensors screamed warnings as exotic energy signatures bloomed across multiple vectors, converging from London from the northeast. "What
What the hell? Integra grabbed Walter's tablet, checking external sensors. Her face went pale. We have multiple airborne contacts, massive energy signatures. Not vampire, not ghoul, something entirely different. Alucard moved to the window, shadows extending to enhance his perception. Well, well, looks like we have new players joining the game, and they brought an army.
The Slayer was already moving toward the exit, weapons systems activating. Whatever was coming registered on his HUD as hostile. Massive necrotic signatures wrapped around something technological, fusion of undead power and military hardware. It felt wrong in a way that transcended normal threat assessment. These weren't vampires or demons. These were something this universe had crafted specifically, and they were heading directly for London. Anderson blocked his path, bayonets crossed. "Where do you think you're going?" The Slayer stared at him through his visor. Then, slowly, deliberately, he reached up and activated his helmet's external speakers. His voice emerged as a digitized rasp, distorted by decades of disuse and Praetor suit modification, but unmistakably human and absolutely certain. Demons. One word, the first he'd spoken since arriving. It carried the weight of eons, the promise of absolute violence, and the cold certainty of purpose that defined his entire existence. Anderson's eyes widened fractionally. "You can speak!" "Demons," the Slayer repeated, pointing toward the incoming signatures. "Kill." "Those aren't demons, lad," Anderson said, but his conviction wavered. "They're—" The Slayer's hand shot out, faster than Anderson expected, and grabbed the tablet from Integra's hand. His HUD interfaced with the device, pulling data, analyzing the energy signatures. Similar to Baron of Hell physiological markers, but wrapped in cybernetic augmentation. Similar to Archvile necrotic resonance, but channeled through vampiric infrastructure. Not true demons, but close enough that every instinct screamed threat, eliminate, purge. He thrust the tablet back at Integra and spoke again, each word measured and absolute. "Demons, made from dead, kill all." Understanding dawned on Integra's face. "Millennium. The Major's been quiet for too long. Those signatures, they're his experimental forces. Vampire soldiers combined with—" She looked at the Slayer with new comprehension. With something he found, something that shouldn't exist in this world. The Slayer turned back to Anderson. "Help or stay." It wasn't a request or a question. It was tactical assessment. Ally or obstacle. Choose now. Anderson stared at this crusader who fought demons, killed vampires, and spoke with the brevity of someone who'd said everything that needed saying millennia ago. A man, if he was still a man, who'd somehow crossed dimensions, still carrying his war with him. The Scottish paladin's grin split his face like a wound. I'll help you, mad bastard. Can't let the Protestants have all the fun now, can I?" He flourished his bayonets. "Heinkel, Yumi, we're going demon hunting with the Space Marine here." "He's not a Space Marine," Integra said, but her objection was automatic, distracted. She was already calculating deployment strategies, collateral damage estimates, civilian evacuation protocols. "Close enough," Anderson countered. "He's a warrior monk without the monk part, just pure warrior, refined to absolute essence." He clapped the Slayer on the shoulder, a gesture of camaraderie that would have gotten most people killed. "You and me, lad, we'll paint London red with whatever the Major sending our way." The Slayer nodded once. Acceptance. Alucard laughed, genuine delight in his voice. "Oh, this is perfect. The Crusader and the Paladin, united in righteous slaughter. The Major won't know who hit him."
The Situation Room at Hellsing Manor transformed into a war room within minutes. Satellite feeds displayed multiple airborne contacts approaching London from a Millennium staging area in the North Sea. Walter coordinated with the wild geese, while Integra issued orders with clipped precision. The Doomslayer stood before a tactical display, his helmet's HUD interfacing with Hellsing systems in ways that made the organization's technicians nervous. 72 aircraft, Walter reported, modified V-1 flying bombs based on energy signatures, but the payloads aren't conventional explosives, they're deployment vessels. For what? Integra demanded. The Slayer's gauntleted finger tapped the screen, highlighting one of the contacts. His armor's translation systems had finally parsed enough of this reality's language to generate basic communication protocols. Text appeared on the display in harsh digital font. Vampire soldiers, augmented, cybernetic plus necrotic fusion, demon-adjacent threat profile. How can he possibly know that? Heinkel asked. Because he's fought things like this before, Anderson said quietly, watching the Slayer work. Different universe, same evil. Pain and death wear a lot of faces, but the stink's always the same. The Slayer pulled up combat footage from Hellsing's archives, previous Millennium encounters, vampire attacks, freak engagements. His HUD compared energy signatures, movement patterns, regenerative capabilities. He'd seen this before, not exact matches, but close enough. Hell's experiments with corrupted human flesh, Olivia Pierce's UAC cultists transformed into demon hybrids, Diag Grav's attempts to merge technology with Hell's power. This Major was doing the same thing, using vampire infection as a base, adding cybernetic augmentation, creating disposable shock troops that combined undead resilience with military hardware. Familiar patterns, familiar solutions. He turned to Integra and spoke, his voice still that digitized rasp. Their commander, where? The Major? Integra's expression hardened. Unknown. Millennium's command structure is cell-based and highly compartmentalized. We've been hunting him for decades. The Slayer shook his head. Wrong answer. In his experience, creatures like this Major, architects of atrocity, engineers of suffering, never stayed far from their masterworks. They wanted to watch, to savor, to witness the culmination of their designs. He pointed to the formation of aircraft on the screen, then drew a quick diagram with his finger, deployment pattern, coverage area, deliberate gaps in the formation. Here, he said, marking a specific point in the airspace, watching, always watching. Walter leaned in, analyzing the Slayer's assessment. He's right. There's a gap in the formation, a corridor where nothing is deploying, clear sightline to the entire operation. His eyes widened. There's something there, stealth technology, cloaked aircraft, the Major's command ship. Can we target it? Integra asked. Not with conventional weapons, Walter admitted. We'd need something with enough penetration to punch through military-grade cloaking and armored hull plating. The Slayer reached down and unholstered the BFG 9000. Every person in the room took an involuntary step backward. The weapon hummed with barely contained power, green energy flickering across its barrel in patterns that hurt to look at directly. This was the weapon he'd been saving, the last shot of argent energy he couldn't replenish. "What the hell is that?" Anderson breathed. "Big fucking gun," the Slayer said flatly. He'd learned the acronym from UAC Marines who'd coined it in a moment of terrified awe. The name stuck. "Will it work?" Integra asked. The Slayer nodded. One shot, one chance. He'd need clear sightline, trajectory calculation, and perfect timing. But if it connected, the Major's command ship would cease to exist, along with a significant portion of the airspace around it. Collateral damage, acceptable if it eliminated the command structure. "Then we have a plan,"
Integra said. Alucard and the wild geese will handle ground forces when the freak deployment begins. Anderson and Iscariot will cover civilian evacuation and provide backup. You, she pointed at the Slayer, will eliminate the Major's command presence. Without leadership, the vampire soldiers lose coordination. And what happens after he fires that monstrosity? Anderson asked. We survive, Integra said simply. Walter, coordinate with the Round Table. I want Parliament bunkers sealed and London's emergency protocols active within the hour. This is going to get catastrophic before it gets better. The Slayer checked his remaining ammunition. 40 shells for the super shotgun, plasma rifle at 58% charge, rockets down to 3, crucible at 63%. Limited resources for what promised to be sustained urban combat against numerically superior forces. Standard Tuesday in hell. Alucard appeared at his shoulder, moving through shadows with his usual disconcerting ease. A word of advice, Crusader. The Major's troops won't die easily. They're engineered for maximum suffering, theirs and yours. When you pull that trigger and vaporize his command ship, every single one of those vampire soldiers will go berserk. No coordination means no restraint. They'll tear through London like rabid animals. The Slayer met Alucard's glowing eyes. Good. The vampire's grin could have cut diamonds. Oh, I really do like you. Tell me, do you ever fear fear? Ever hesitate? No. Not even against impossible odds? The Slayer's response was to rack a shell into his super shotgun, the sound echoing through the war room like a declaration. He'd faced hell's endless armies, fought through dimensions where reality itself tried to kill him, died and returned so many times that death had become just another obstacle. Numbers didn't matter, odds didn't matter, only the objective mattered. Kill the demons, destroy the threat, save anyone who could still be saved. Well then, Anderson said, crossing himself with a bayonet, God's put a proper angel of death in our midst, even if he's wearing green armor instead of white wings. Let's go show these Nazi bastards what happens when they bring hell to London. The Slayer headed for the exit, each step purposeful. Behind him, centuries-old vampire hunters and immortal monsters scrambled to keep pace. Somewhere over the North Sea, an army of the damned flew toward England's capital, shepherded by a madman who thought he'd seen the depths of violence. He was about to be educated.
London burned. The Millennium deployment hit like a plague wrapped in fire. Modified V-1 rockets screamed over the Thames, splitting open to release their cargo. Hundreds of vampire soldiers, freaks augmented with cybernetic implants and fueled by artificial blood that made them faster, stronger, and completely expendable. They hit the streets with coordinated precision, spreading through the city like a cancer designed by committee. The Doomslayer stood on the roof of Hellsing Manor, watching the chaos unfold through his HUD's enhanced optics. Civilian casualties mounting, military response inadequate, police forces overwhelmed. Standard population center under siege scenario. Standard response required. Aggressive intervention, maximum lethality, zero tolerance for collateral targets. His sensors locked on to the gap in the formation, the invisible command ship hovering above the carnage like a vulture watching carrion. The Major was there. He could feel it. Architects of atrocity always watched their masterworks. The BFG 9000 powered up with a sound like reality tearing. Green energy coalesced in the barrel, argent particles achieving critical mass.
The weapon's targeting system interfaced with his HUD, calculating atmospheric density, wind speed, distance to target, energy dispersal patterns. One shot. After this, the BFG became dead weight. "Firing solution locked," he said into the comms Walter had provided. His voice carried no emotion, just tactical certainty. "All teams brace for impact," Integra's voice crackled back. "Slayer has the shot." Alucard's laughter echoed through the channel. "Show them what real hell looks like, Crusader." The Slayer squeezed the trigger. The BFG discharged with the sound of a dying star. A sphere of emerald energy erupted from the barrel, tearing through the air faster than sound, faster than thought. It tracked toward the invisible command ship with malevolent intelligence, argent energy seeking the highest concentration of necrotic signatures like a blowhound scenting prey. The sphere connected. For half a second, nothing happened. Then the sky caught fire. The stealth field collapsed as the argent energy punched through it, revealing a massive zeppelin bristling with weapons and observation equipment. The energy sphere didn't simply explode, it expanded, tendrils of green lightning arcing out in fractal patterns, seeking every target in range. The Zeppelin's hull melted like wax, metal turning to slag, advanced technology reduced to component atoms. Secondary explosions rippled through the structure as fuel reserves ignited, ammunition cooked off, power cores went critical. Inside, the Major had approximately 3 seconds to realize his mistake before the command deck vaporized around him. His carefully cultivated composure shattered as argent energy consumed everything, indiscriminate and absolute. His final thought, broadcast over dying comms, impossible. The Zeppelin came apart in a fireball visible from orbit. Burning debris rained across North London, fragments of the Major's ambitions scattering like ash. The Slayer lowered the BFG, its barrel smoking, charge completely depleted. "Target eliminated," he reported. On the streets below, exactly as Alucard predicted, the freak soldiers went berserk. Coordination collapsed into chaos. Vampire soldiers turned on each other, attacked civilians with rabid fury, charged toward any movement with suicidal aggression. The organized invasion became a massacre without direction, which made them easier to kill.
The Slayer maglocked the BFG to his back and descended from the roof with his remaining weapons. He hit the street at terminal velocity, prayer suit's shock absorption turning what should have been fatal impact into a tactical entrance. The concrete cratered beneath his boots. 3 freaks turned toward the sound, cybernetic eyes glowing red and charged. Super Shotgun spoke twice. The first freak's torso separated from its legs. The second lost its head in a spray of corrupted blood and sparking electronics. The third got close enough for a glory kill. The Slayer grabbed its arm, twisted, ripped the limb free with enhanced servos, and drove the torn cybernetic appendage through the vampire's skull like a stake. The kill fed his systems, recharging shields, filtering stimulants through his bloodstream. More freaks emerged from side streets, drawn by violence like moths to flame. The Slayer moved through them like a combine harvester through wheat, methodical, efficient, unstoppable. Plasma bolts cooked undead flesh. Shotgun blasts removed limbs and heads. When they got close, his armored fists did the work, each punch backed by tons of force and centuries of killing experience. Anderson appeared from a burning building, bayonets slick with vampire blood, grin wider than sanity allowed. "Amen!" he roared, driving blessed steel through a freak's chest. The creature dissolved into ash and sparking circuits. This is what I'm talking about. Righteous slaughter in the name of... A freak leapt at him from above. The Slayer's equipment launcher spoke, ice bomb detonating mid-air and flash freezing the vampire into a crystalline statue. Anderson's bayonet shattered it into fragments. "Much obliged," Anderson laughed. "You're not half bad for a Protestant." "Not Protestant," the Slayer grunted, reloading. "What then?" Angry. They fought back to back, the Crusader and the Paladin, cutting through Millennium's forces with synchronized brutality. Anderson's regeneration meant he could take risks that would kill normal soldiers. The Slayer's armor meant he didn't need to dodge what he could tank. Together, they carved a path through London's streets, leaving ash and wreckage in their wake. Alucard manifested nearby, shadows forming his distinctive silhouette. He was laughing, genuinely delighted, as he released his restraints and became something vast and terrible. Hellhounds materialized from his coat, red eyes gleaming, tearing into freaks with supernatural fury. "Is this what you've been doing?" Alucard called to the Slayer over the carnage. "For how long? Years? Decades?" The Slayer grabbed a freak by the throat, slammed it into the pavement hard enough to crack asphalt, and fired his shotgun point blank into its chest. "Longer." "How much longer?" The Slayer looked at him, visor reflecting firelight and chaos. "Forever." Something in that single word made even Alucard pause. Not hyperbole, not exaggeration, simple statement of fact from someone who'd been killing for so long that time itself had lost meaning. The vampire's grin faded into something approaching respect. "Then let's make tonight memorable," Alucard said quietly. The battle raged through the night. Wild geese forces established defensive perimeters. Iscariot teams evacuated civilians while purging vampire nests. Hellsing's conventional forces provided fire support and medical aid. And at the center of it all, 3 figures carved through Millennium's invasion like angels of death. By dawn, London's streets were silent. Bodies littered the pavement, freaks reduced to ash, some civilians who couldn't be saved, but far fewer than there should have been. The Slayer stood in Trafalgar Square, armor scorched and dented, ammunition exhausted, crucible charge at 12%. But standing, still standing.
The aftermath of London's burning was a peculiar kind of silence. Smoke drifted through empty streets, emergency services moved through rubble with grim efficiency. Parliament convened in underground bunkers to assess damage and assign blame. The Round Table debated whether to acknowledge the supernatural nature of the attack or maintain comfortable lies. The Doomslayer didn't care about any of it. He sat in Hellsing Manor's armory, performing maintenance on his weapons with mechanical precision. The super shotgun's barrel needed cleaning. The plasma rifle's heat sinks required recalibration. The BFG 9000 was dead weight now, its Argent cell completely depleted, but he kept it anyway. Sentiment wasn't something he indulged often, but the weapon had served him well. Integra entered, Walter trailing behind with tea that the Slayer suspected was more ritual than refreshment. She looked exhausted, the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from command during crisis, but her posture remained military straight. "Final casualty count is lower than projected," she said without preamble, "significantly lower. The tactical analysts estimate that without your intervention, we'd be looking at 10,000 civilian deaths. Instead, we're at 412. She paused. Still too many, but not the apocalypse the Major intended. The Slayer continued cleaning his shotgun. 412. Each one a failure. Each one a name he'd never know, a life he couldn't save. The math was always the same. Kill the demons faster, save more people. Never fast enough, never all of them. The question now, Integra continued, is what happens next? The Major is dead. Millennium's command structure is obliterated. But there are still vampire nests throughout Europe, supernatural threats that won't simply vanish because we won one battle. She lit a cigar, studying him through the smoke. Hellsing could use someone with your capabilities. Permanent position, resources, support infrastructure. You'd have everything you need to continue your war against monsters.
The Slayer looked up from his weapon maintenance. His helmet sat beside him on the workbench, revealing a face that was younger than it should be given what his eyes had seen. Scars crossed his features, some surgical, some combat, all old beyond measure. But his eyes were the most telling thing. Flat, emotionless, windows into something that had burned out everything except purpose. "Vampires aren't demons," he said quietly. "No, they're not. Some are monsters. Some, like Alucard, serve humanity in their own twisted way. It's complicated." "Demons aren't complicated." The Slayer's hands resumed their maintenance routine. "Demons are simple. Kill them all. No exceptions, no mercy, no doubt." "And you think you'll find your way back to that simpler war?" The Slayer was silent for a long moment. His HUD, still active even without the helmet, displayed intermittent scans for dimensional anomalies, searching for any trace of the portal that brought him here. Nothing. The rift had closed, severed by the BFG's discharge or simple cosmic indifference. He was stuck in this reality until he found another way out, or until something found him. "I'll keep looking," he said finally, "but while I'm here, show me the monsters, the real ones, the ones that deserve killing." A smile touched Integra's lips, sharp and predatory. "I can work with that. Walter, prepare quarters for our guest, something with reinforced walls. I suspect he's not gentle with furniture."
"Already arranged, Sir Integra," Walter said. "I took the liberty of converting the reinforced storage wing. It should accommodate his unique requirements." Anderson appeared in the doorway, bayonets sheathed but readily accessible. The Scottish paladin looked remarkably cheerful for someone who'd spent the night wading through vampire corpses. "Harrod you might be sticking around, lad. Does that mean the Vatican gets to requisition your services occasionally?" "If your demons need killing," the Slayer said. "Oh, we've got plenty of those. Different kind from what you're used to, maybe, but evil's evil regardless of denomination." Anderson's expression grew serious. "Just remember, not everything with fangs is damned. Not everything human is saved. This world's got more grey than black and white. I kill what needs killing. Everything else can stay out of my way." "Fair enough." Anderson extended his hand. "Welcome to Earth's supernatural clusterfuck, Space Marine. Try not to level too many historical landmarks." The Slayer shook his hand, grip firm but controlled. Strange, forming alliances. In Hell there were no allies, just him and the endless hordes. But here, in this reality where monsters could be complicated and humans could weaponize the undead, perhaps temporary cooperation made tactical sense. Alucard materialized from shadows because apparently the vampire couldn't use doors like normal beings. "So the Crusader stays. How delightful. Tell me, will you try to kill me eventually? I'm genuinely curious whether you could." The Slayer regarded Alucard with the same flat assessment he'd give any threat. "Are you a demon?" "Debatable." "Then we'll see." Alucard's laugh echoed through the armory. "Oh yes, this arrangement is going to be wonderfully entertaining." Over the following weeks, the Slayer integrated into Hellsing's operations with the same efficiency he applied to everything else. He didn't socialize, didn't participate in staff meetings unless required, didn't engage in the political maneuvering between Hellsing, Iscariot, and the Round Table. He simply waited for targets, received coordinates, and eliminated threats with methodical precision. Vampire Coven in Manchester? Eliminated. Ghoul infestation in Edinburgh? Purged. Rogue FREK cell in Dublin? Ashed. Each mission the same pattern. Arrive, assess, annihilate. No hesitation, no mercy, no deviation from purpose. The supernatural community began to whisper about the armored figure who killed vampires like he'd been doing it since before they were born. Some called him the Green Angel, others the Silent Reaper. The older vampires, the ones with long memories and political instincts, called him what he was, a walking apocalypse temporarily pointed at their enemies instead of them. But the Slayer didn't care about names or reputations. He cared about the dimensional scans his armor ran continuously, searching for any sign of a portal back to his hell. Because this wasn't his war. These weren't his demons. This was temporary duty in a foreign reality until he could resume his real mission. And yet, as months passed and London rebuilt and Millennium's remnants scattered into hiding, a strange thing happened. The Slayer found himself not content, never that, but perhaps less urgently focused on departure. These monsters weren't demons, true, but they killed humans, corrupted innocents, spread suffering. Close enough.
6 months after London burned, the Doomslayer stood on Hellsing Manor's grounds under a sky that reminded him nothing of Mars or Hell or any dimension he'd fought through. Earth sky. Strange sky. But he was adapting. His armor bore new scars now, claw marks from vampires, scoring from blessed bayonets during training with Anderson, burns from Alucard's shadow tendrils during their increasingly frequent sparring sessions. The Praetor suit had adapted too, interfacing with Hellsing's technology, learning this reality's rules while maintaining its core purpose. Integra approached, her ever-present cigar sending smoke into the evening air. We've received intelligence about a large-scale vampire operation in Berlin, possible Millennium remnants attempting reorganization. I'm sending Alucard and a full wild geese complement. I'd like you on this one. The Slayer nodded. Simple acknowledgement. The job continued. You know, Integra said, studying him, you still scan for dimensional rifts every night. Walter showed me the logs. You're still looking for a way home. Yes. Will you leave if you find it? The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither addressed directly. The Slayer considered it, really considered it for the first time in months. His war waited in Hell's corridors, endless and eternal. But here, in this strange reality where monsters could serve righteousness and humans could be the greatest evil, his war continued in different form. Demons, vampires, undead abominations, categories blurred when reduced to their essence. Corruption, suffering, evil that fed on innocence. All of it needed killing. Maybe, he said finally, honest answer. Or maybe hell can wait. Integra's smile was thin but genuine. Good enough. Briefing at 0600 hours. Berlin operation launches at dusk. She walked away, leaving him alone with the night and his thoughts. Somewhere in this vast universe, hell still waged war against everything that lived. Somewhere, demons still clawed at reality's barriers. Someday, he'd return to that war and finish what he started. But tonight, there were vampires in Berlin, and tomorrow, something else would need killing. And the day after that, and the day after that, an endless chain of battles against evil wearing different faces, but always the same rotten core. The Slayer checked his weapons, preparing for the next deployment. The super shotgun's familiar weight was comfort. The Crucible's hum was meditation. This wasn't his Earth, his universe, or his war, but it would do. For now, it would do. Because some truths transcended dimensions. Evil existed, innocence needed defending, and he was very, very good at killing the former to protect the latter. The Hellsing universe had demons of its own, and they were learning what countless dimensions already knew. The Doomslayer never stopped, never rested, never showed mercy to those who preyed on the innocent. And now London's supernatural underworld whispered his reputation in the same terrified tones that Hell's legions once used. He was here, he was hunting, and they would all burn.